Hey, welcome back everybody. This week we're going to focus on a great tune from 1969, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it is Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. This is a very creative song that always frustrates you or me when I would try and play it in standard tuning, and it would never sort of quite sound right. And years later with the internet, you figure out, oh, it's not standard tuning at all, and it's this crazy tuning that we'll talk about here. But once you get that, then the parts sort of fall right into place and it sounds fantastic. So I want to be able to go over that with you today. Hey, if you haven't already, please go down and click subscribe and ring the bell. The bell lets you know every time I drop new content, which I do every single week on lessons like this. And let me know in the comments what you think and if there's a song you'd like me to do. Also, in every one of my videos, there are jump links, and you can see the horizontal red scroll bar there on YouTube, and you can jump right to the part of the song that you want to get to if you don't want to listen to the whole thing. So just be aware and use that as you like. All right, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. I'm going to dedicate this to my good friends, the Kennedy brothers up in the Pacific Northwest and Seattle area, who great friends of mine, let me sit in with them a lot, and they do this song on their set all the time, and Joe plays it in standard tuning, and it's awesome. And so Joe, if you're watching this, keep doing what you're doing, but if you've never experimented with the alternate tuning here, this is what I'm going to go over today. Okay, first of all, the tuning. So the tuning that Stephen Stills uses is, well, I don't know what I would call it. Every string except one is tuned to E. So, yeah, so you leave your low E string alone. You tune your A string all the way down to E. You tune your D string up to E. You tune your G string down to E. Leave your B string alone. That's the only string that's not an E. And then you have your high E, right? So you're messing with... you're changing 5, 4, and 3, the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string down to an E, down or up to an E, depending. And it sounds like that. It already sounds like the song, right? Okay, and so because of that, what happens is, because this is, remember, 1969, and a lot of the songs that are going on in that era, dare I say, since the Beatles breached the Indian music thing with Norwegian Wood, that just opened the gate to all kinds of Eastern influences and all kinds of rock and roll and pop songs. And so this sort of lends itself to that. In Indian Eastern music, you have a sort of a droning note that sort of goes on throughout, and then there's, notes that play around that. So then you get this kind of sound. You can hit all those strings and it sounds great. So this, because of that now, because every string is an E except for one, chords become super easy. So I'm going to go over a number of chord shapes as I go through the parts of the song, and you can really improvise a little bit with it. And I think Stephen Stills bounces back and forth between a number of different voicings that are similar, and I'll show examples of all of those here. So the intro part, when you're in standard tuning, you can kind of get it, right? It's this part. Which many of us have done, right? You're just on the B and the E string, the 1st and 2nd string. Right? So those all sort of work. But when you try in standard tuning and you hit these other notes, it sort of doesn't sound right, you know what I mean? And you need those other notes. If you just play those two, it sort of doesn't sound right, right? Well, now that you're in the E tuning, you can just sort of go across all the strings, or start it from 4 down and do that riff. And then it sounds right? Isn't that great? I'm playing with my fingernail. I'm just sort of snapping it like that. And I don't know why. I don't sort of ever do that on any other songs, but this song, my hand wants to do that. It's possible that he used a pick. And that's fine. Just pick what sounds right to you, whether you use a pick or your finger, but I'm going to use finger. So that's the first part. That's your E chord, just a going across, right? So that intro, and then we're into the verse. So now we're getting into the chords. Now let me talk about, first chord is an A-ish. So here's all the sort of variations of those A or the bar chords when you're coming across a chord, right? So you could do it just with your single finger on the low G string. Do that. You can add an octave, so you can go 6 and 4 or 6 and 3. It's sort of the same, right? 6 and 2. So now you get that B string. Or you can go all the way 6 and 1. Or you can 6, 1 and 2. Or any combination. Right? It all sort of works. You want those droning notes to go on. And so I would say pick the one that feels right to you. I'll show an example over my shoulder when I'm going through these, what I use. But pick the one that feels right to you. But that's it for like the chord, right? Okay, so then after the intro, it goes to the verse. A, E, B, down to A. Now here's a seventh. Here's how he voices the seventh. He just puts his single finger on 6. I'm doing my ring finger on 6, and I'm barring 2 frets down on 3 on the first and second string. Right, you can hear that in there. He doesn't do it every time, but you can hear that. So again, that verse. Right, and that's that. And then at the end of the verse structure, it goes, I am yours, you are mine, you are what you are. You know, and you make it hard. And then it goes around again, right? The next part is the, I'll just call it the B section. The lyrics are saying, tear in yourself, right? That's just an A. Alternate the voicings that you want. And then coming out of that, this is all in the first section. And you make it hard, and you make it hard. And now we're going into the second section. Right, the bass does that part. Okay, the second section. The main sort of piece that you're doing on guitar is you're going to hit an octave on 12. And then you come down here to 5th fret, 5th and 7th fret, and you're going to do this little figure. You don't have to tap the guitar, but I just do. And you want to grab that note on the B string and wiggle it. You can hear him doing that on the record rather than, or just playing it open. He may every once in a while, but that's more of what you hear. Right? So he's going around on that part. And then it goes a Sunday in the afternoon, which is an A. And he does that 7th. What have you got to lose? Right? So I was repeating that. And where it changes is where he goes to a D, and Stephen Stills is doing that great sort of R&B, you know, and I tell it like it is. That's a D, A, D, A, back to E. And that's really all there is to that segment number 2. Okay, now we move on to segment number 3. I guess in classical music you call them movements, right? This is movement number 3. So here's where you really get that sort of Indian or Eastern music influence sound. And this is really a jam that Stephen Stills is doing, and he's largely doing it off of the B, using the B string, and he's ringing everything else out, right? You really just sort of let loose and have fun with this. So, you know, that last little part ends, and then he comes up here on 12 on the B string, right? That's where he starts. So that wasn't totally note for note perfect, but you get the idea. You can hit whatever string you want. You know, play the note, whatever note you're going to play on the B string, and you know, just catch any one of those E strings or more, and it just creates that great Eastern vibe. But really, mostly what he's playing is, you know, mostly major scale, right? Or 7th. Any of those notes in any combination, right? He does on one of those, he hits that E flat. There's a second acoustic guitar on the record going on there, but you can sort of approximate it with this one guitar, just one guitar when you're playing it live. You know, but just go crazy with that. It's just riffing off of the B string up and down the neck and letting those E notes sort of drone on. So he goes around a couple times around that, and then the vocals come in. And what's happening on the guitar, and really I guess what's happening on the vocals, He's just going back between D and an E, you know, in the way that, you know, a D or an E chord could be on here, right? So, you know, normal on standard tuning, this would be the shape of your D chord, right? But really all you're doing, you're using this part. You're only using strings 1 and 2. So that would be a D. Then this would be an E, sliding up 2 frets. And then this shape, if you're on your if you're thinking caged, right? This is the C shape D, right? So that's the C shape D. This is now the A shape in caged, right? So now this is the A shaped D and E. All right. So he's just going back between those two. And the second vocal part, it's then he builds, and he builds. And then you can do a couple different variations, because I think he plays it a little differently a couple different times. A lot of times he then goes to this shape, which is sort of like an E7, right? And then you end with the D to an E. Well, here's a D right here, an E. You could use any of those Ds and Es, right? But he's sort of building, you know, you want to start low and you end sort of high. So not as much as a crescendo, but that's the sort of effect that he's doing when he's going up the neck with those D to E. Low D, low E, low D, build on it, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. You can even go up here, right? So that's the idea. It's D to E, D to E. So you're just moving positions from D to E on any of those shapes. And then more of that, right? And okay, so that's the theory. It's D to E, D to E, and the vocals overlaying. Now the big part before we get into our final movement, that's sort of a hook. Everybody sort of the hook that goes. That's the signal to go into the last part. You know, you're doing your build. Whichever way you get there to E. Now there's this one. So this shape is, you're only really doing this in terms of like where you're laying your fingers on the first, second, and third string. But here's the first position, and you want to catch that fourth string at least when you're doing this, right? It's this part. Right, so this is how you finger that. Okay, and you get out of that by going. Then just pick up your pinky. And then down 2 frets. And now we're ready to move into our final movement, the do-do-do-do-do part. Okay, so let's get to that. All right, so our final movement. Looked at a lot of live videos of him playing this because I really wanted to see if I can get exactly what he's doing. I see a lot of videos on YouTube and they sort of short this part, I think. So I wanted to try and get this right, and it's really hard to find it how he actually played it, and he probably alternated it over time. You know, to my ear, what sounds best is this shape. You're going across on the sixth string, 4th string, and 2nd string. So you're skipping every other string. And the reason is because it sounds better to me when you have on the vocal harmony, that's the high vocal harmony that Graham Nash is doing. And it just sounds better if you have that in the chord, in my opinion. Right? So we're gonna do that fingering. You could do any one of those variations that we talked about, but I'm gonna go with this one. Right? And all you're doing is moving from, you're starting in A, up 2 frets to B, and then you're gonna jump up to F sharp, which is all the way up here on 14, down to your D on 10, and you're ending on 12 on the E. Okay, now the strum pattern, you know, you want to keep it loose. When you listen to the recording, it's hard to tell if it's the strum or a shaker. The vocals are going, but I don't think you want to make all those stabs. What you're hearing on the record is you want to keep that going. Super hard, you know, if you're just learning this in the beginning and you're also trying to sing it, okay, it makes it a little harder. It's easier if you just play what you sing, right? But you want to have that rhythm going on. Right? It's not exactly with the vocal, but it's holding down that main rhythm, and I think that's the important part. Like I said, you can do it in any one of these other voicings. I just don't think it sounds as good. I like to grab this one. Right? Okay. All right, well, that is Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. I hope you learned something new with that crazy almost all E tuning. But if you have a guitar that you can string down like that or retune and play around with this, it's really magic when you get those chords under your fingers and play it with that tuning. It just sounds fantastic, just like the record, right? Okay, if you haven't already, please do click subscribe and ring the bell. It lets you know every single time that I drop new content, which I do every week. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this lesson, and let me know if there's a song you'd like me to do. I love playing those requests. And until next time, take care, everybody.